Leadership Roundtable. I'm Casey Cooler, Yamhill County Commissioner. We have Mayor Linda Watkins from the City of Carlton with us, and we have Pat Evans from Turtledove Shelters and many other things. First, I wanted to say, do you have questions that I can't answer about the new variant of concern of coronavirus? Because I definitely won't be able to answer them, but I can direct you to places. Or Mayor Watkins says no.
We're just, you feel like you're just kind of getting a foot up a little bit up toward the top of the ladder, and then the rung breaks out on you again. We'll just get through it.
Yeah, I was actually, so I followed it fairly closely. There are some science journalists that I appreciate their writing on the subject, who also write for Science Magazine. And as I was looking at last week's version of Science Magazine, there was a brief interview with the CEO of BioNTech, so the Pfizer-BioNTech mRNA vaccine. And the interviewer asked him, well, now, do you feel like we've run the course of variants? Is Delta the last one? And I thought, oh my goodness, what timing for asking that question. But the CEO said, I'd love to think that we're past it, but who knows what can happen. And I feel like we're in who knows what can happen with 30 new mutations at once. So we will see, and we will see. It does sound like Regeneron, the antibody cocktail, may not be as effective, but again, it's still very early on. And I want to then offer up to Mayor Watkins, what would you like to share with the community this week? And also, Pat does have a lot of knowledge about internet, so we should make sure that your internet questions get answered.
Well, first thing I'm going to do is stop video while I'm talking and see if that will keep me online. I don't know, it just seems like there's so much going on around here that I can't keep track half the time. December 2nd, and I think it's 5 o'clock or 5:30, we'll be doing our tree lighting in the upper park. So, we're looking forward to that. I've been conscripted to read The Night Before Christmas to the small children, which is a really frightening thought. If you knew me and kids, you would know how terrifying that is, but we'll see how it goes. We'll do fine. So we're looking forward to that. They've got the park mostly decorated at this point. If you get a chance, come up and check it out. And we're doing the tunnels again this year, so great places to take pictures, Christmas pictures. Those are always kind of fun. Let's see, we're done with the water line, I think, installation. I'm not sure that we're completely done with, I drove out Meadow Lake Road the other day, and I'm not sure that we're completely done with the paving on that yet, but it's definitely looking a lot better than it did. So that's going on. And now we're working on our sewer projects, getting those done. And we're starting conversations with ODOT about the reroute, the Highway 47 reroutes. So those are going to be some intense conversations, I think, for a while.
And Mayor, I missed, you said we're starting conversations with ODOT, and then there was a gap, and then I heard intense conversation.
Highway 47 reroute. The Highway 47, well, realignment, basically, I think is the technical term that they use for it. What's happened is that we had a team that we were working with for a couple of years, and the people on that team have all, well, you know that because you know John Eustace. Well, we're losing that team, and they're bringing in a new group of people. So basically, we're starting from scratch. So we'll see how that goes.
And remind me of the timing of that, Mayor. What was the hope for the beginning of construction?
Initially, they were talking about, I think, 23, 24, somewhere, I think, right in that area. Um, I don't see it happening much before that, just, depending on how things go. I know that the project has now been accepted and is in the STIP. It is in their planning. So that, and the money's been allocated. So it's going to be a matter of figuring out how and what. And they also have to do Main Street. We'll be looking at Main Street, redoing that too. So, yeah.
And Mayor, can you remind me of what needs to be done on Main Street? Is it a complete rebuild? And does that include water and
Well,
sewer? I can't remember.
yeah, it's kind of a two-part project. Yeah, Main Street needs definitely sewer and I think water both redone. There was some question about the intensity of that project, depending on if they were going to be putting trucks through on Main Street or if they were going to be putting just passenger vehicles, because the engineering requirements are different for each. But the plan, of course, is to get Main Street done so that what they're giving back to us is a street that will last us for 20 years or something. And then, but we're not sure about the timing on either of them, if they're going to try to do the realignment first and then do Main Street, or do Main Street first and then. So there are lots of logistics still to be cleared up and worked out and developed yet. It's just such a horrendous project. It's so huge. Ow, ooh, my cat just decided to sharpen his claws on my knee.
Well, we can't see it.
Yeah, good thing. But anyway, so yeah, it's just such a huge project, and we're so concerned about, just access to the city while it's going on. And they also have some ADA ramps that they're going to be putting in beforehand, and some that they're going to be putting into, I think, the money kind of into an escrow account or something to hold it back until we start doing the Main Street rebuild, before they get those ADA ramps done, because they don't want to do them and then have to tear it up and do it again. Anyhow, I think when we finally get it started, the town's going to feel like we're under construction for quite a number of years. It's going to be interesting. So that's just as scary. And we just want to be really, really, really careful that we do it absolutely right, because if we don't, it's not going to be, it'll be a difficult thing to repair or redo. So
And
it's a big
so,
project.
Mayor, is it that they're going to start on the realignment and then work on Main Street? I'm just wondering, like, what's the route through town going to be for during construction?
We don't know yet. That's one of the things that we don't know. Initially, our understanding was that they would do, I think, the realignment first, because that will come down. If you're asking about the actual route, what they're planning on doing is coming down Highway 47 to into town, just where the market is there on Highway 47, that the little market, and
Yeah.
so, and then they will come off of Highway 47 there and use the old railroad kind of turntable area, which will blend them into the existing Monroe Street. So, and then come down Monroe Street just to Pine Street, which is the one that comes between Ken Wright's train station tasting room and all of that, comes right in front of that. So, and then it will come down there and then go on out south on Highway 47, the Pine Street. It's not going to do a whole lot for the people who live on Yamhill Street and Pine Street. They're still going to be living with truck traffic running right through, right by their houses. They probably still won't be able to sleep at night or watch TV, but it will at least get them off of the Main Street. And then once they get that was the original plan, was that they would do that section first, and then once they did that section, then they would come back in and redo our main street, the old Main Street, and fix
Mhm.
that. And then at that time, they would sign that piece over to the city, so we would own our Main Street again.
Okay. Okay.
But that was the original plan. Now, like I said, we've got a new team and a lot of things have changed. So we don't know at this point where we are or what's going to happen. We're
Okay.
just,
That's a hard position to be in, but just keep me posted and know that I'm happy to put a word in or be present for meetings as necessary.
thank you, Casey. Yes,
Yeah.
we would appreciate that a lot. It's
You're right. There's a lot of logistics involved.
it's a huge, scary project, but it's one that when is done, hopefully at least our center of town. And with doing that, we're hoping also it will reduce some danger on those two intersections that we have now, the one from Yamhill Street coming in and the one from Pine Street. Why we haven't had, knock on wood, but why we have not had any accidents there, I mean, serious accidents, is just, a miracle. It's, you can stand there and watch near wrecks all day, every day that you're standing there looking.
Yeah.
Every time.
I wonder if it's just because it's so slow.
I think that's the only thing that's, it just slows people down, but people get so confused because they don't have appropriate signage, and it is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
It's
And
very
who
scary.
is your, is the same person an interim project manager that like we have on the bypass? Or do you know who your project manager is from ODOT?
I can't think of the name right now. We have a new, I don't have it written down, but we've got there's two new people there.
Okay.
Christine is going to be, she's kind of phasing herself out, so she will be leaving also. But so we've got two new people.
Okay.
But in fact, we've got some stuff going on that probably I'll talk to Shannon, and maybe we can fill you in on some of the folks that we're dealing with on some of the things that we're looking at dealing, and fill you in on that, so you have some idea of what's going on our end.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds great.
Yeah, thanks. That'd be great. Not
Yeah,
that you
absolutely.
have to do.
I can do it, and I'm happy to, especially if it'll be helpful. How about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you. And
Thank you.
Pat, is there anything you'd like to share today besides the vast knowledge that you have around internet?
No, not really. Our little Turtledove project continues to percolate along. I hope you can hear me. And we have Turtledove shelters number 37 and 38 ready to go. Having already given out 3 dozen of them in the last year and a half. So my project today is fundraising. So if you get an email from me that says send money, I'm giving you fair warning. I don't know if the mayor is aware, but if you've been down in McMinnville, you see these little white Turtledove teardrop shelters, and my 86-year-old neighbor and I build them. So we're out on our annual fundraising. We're down to about $6,000, and that half of that's already earmarked for product liability insurance for the upcoming year, because we can't, my wife decided not to put our house up as collateral in case there was a liability suit. So she suggested that we have insurance. We're down to being able to make another 5 or 6 shelters before we're before we're exhausted. And right now I've got 4 or 5 more people who are asking for them, so we're getting close to the wire. On a different, completely different subject, I sent the commissioner some information on broadband here in Oregon, and the website is called Broadband Now, and it allows you to bring up information at the state, at the county, and at the city level, indicating what the broadband coverage is. And just by way of summary, Yamhill is at 40.9% broadband coverage. Newburgh is at 89.9. Mac is at 90.8. Carlton is at 76.2% coverage. And Lafayette's at 97.1. I didn't do Grand Ronde or out further west, but I imagine the numbers are pretty low out there also. The good news about that website is that they aggregate data from the broadband providers themselves, as opposed to what the FCC does, which is to aggregate self-reported data during the census as to what the percent coverage is. So the broadband numbers from the FCC are considered highly suspect by everyone in the industry. And the industry generally feels that Broadband Now is a much more reliable resource, and that itself access to that site may help solidify some of the data needs at the county level for allocation of funds. One of the other interesting things on Broadband Now is it lists all of the providers for each of these cities that are available. So if you plug in a zip code, it will tell you here are the following 5 or 10 internet providers that you can access. So if you're going to go into, let's say, an RFP or RFI situation, request for interest, there's a ready-made list of companies that have infrastructure in or around your area that you could tap into and say, we're looking for X, are you interested? And then if they say yes, obviously, here's specifically what we're looking for. And one of the nice things about that process, and I'm sure you've been through it, both of you, is if you tailor your RFI sufficiently detailed, they will actually give you enough information to put your RFP together in their responses. And you can tailor that RFP for the type of service you're looking for. So that's really all I bring to the table today, is that access to that particular website, and the fact that that may make life a little bit easier at all levels of government to try to get your arms around where you need to put the infrastructure bucks. And with that, I'll stop yapping.
And Pat, so I took a look at it, but I couldn't tell whether it was. So one of the tricky things, as you know, is that zip codes cover a large area in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the city of Willamina has excellent broadband coverage, but beyond the city limits, it's very poor. And so it's hard to know. And so one thing that we've had a challenge with, at least at the county, is connecting the actual information on the ground to an application to either the state or the feds, because it looks like there's really good coverage.
Well, that may be a way of going back to the providers and saying, give us your actual usage map, not your coverage map. And if they've got that on any type of mapping system, perhaps Google Earth Pro, your GIS department ought to be able to overlay those together to come up with a composite coverage map. Because I know, for example, if you're stringing cable out there, you know exactly where that stuff is. I mean, because, well, first of all, you're going to have a license with the city or the county to hang that stuff on the poles. And if the county doesn't have that program, I will suggest a good way to make revenue are the fees you can charge for the right to hang stuff in the air.
And counties don't, as far as I understand, don't have the right to charge them for that service.
Cities do, though.
What's that? Cities do, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm amazed by how limited counties are around these issues. We basically can tell them we're within the right of way, and then that's it.
Uh-huh.
But at this point, we also want to encourage them to put them out there. So
yes,
there is that. Well, it's a great resource, and I think that it'll help us in furthering the conversation. Because I will say that when we had our initial work session at the county around what does it look like to fund broadband beyond the funding that we did last year, there are lots of questions to answer, right? And if you don't know the question to begin with, it's hard to start.
Well, one of the interesting things is now that T-Mobile is advertising broadband on their 5G networks. So if they're able to deploy 5G antennas on their sites, that may open up a whole broadband avenue that essentially costs the county nothing, and you may be able to then direct the funds toward more subsidization of the individual user than the subsidization of a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah, we don't really need to do that.
That's my politics coming through loud and clear.
You have the experience with them, not me, so I'm listening closely. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that information. Mayor Watkins, does that help you at all?
Well, I think we're going to have to look into that a little more closely. I'm loving this site. I'll be checking that out for sure and make sure that everybody knows that it's there. I actually had a question for Patrick about the shelters, and this is kind of a simplistic question, but what are they made out of?
Well, they're a combination. Initially, they were a combination of old political signs, which we found was the highest and best use for those things. But we rapidly ran out, and they're made of a material called coroplast, which is what those political signs are made from. And the frames are made out of Doug fir. We use pneumatic tires. We tried solid tires, but we couldn't find a good supplier. We have a hitch that's made here in McMinnville by Mack Welding that goes on the back axle of the bike, like those little kiddie carts that Burley makes down in Eugene.
Yeah.
We plagiarized their design. I think they have full knowledge of our plagiarism, so I guess it's no big secret. And it's all insulated. It's got 2 inches of insulation on the bottom and 1 inch of insulation on the sides and reflective insulation on the top. If you happen to jump on our website, it's turtledoveshelters.com, and you can see what they look like. And if anybody's interested in building them, we'll give them the plans and the assembly manual. Or if somebody needs one, of somebody, let us know. And if we've got the resources and material, we'll be happy to jump in. And I'm sure every town has a few people that are sleeping rough, and it shouldn't happen in the United States, period. This shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and I will say that, Pat, I owe you a letter, and I was just writing about that yesterday. And I apparently you can't do office work in a public setting because people will talk to you.
And
So
you just realized this?
you know, during COVID, it was easy to be out in public and not really see anybody. Or during previous iterations of the pandemic that we're still in.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, I remember one time in March or April of 2020, sitting in downtown McMinnville, and there were two of us on all of 3rd Street.
Wow.
Yes. So it's a remarkable, you know, the phases that we've all gone through.
Yeah.
I do want to note, though, along those lines that, you know, with the Omicron variant of concern, one of the things that we've talked about on here in the past that was lacking was good genomic surveillance. So actually looking at the genomes of the COVID or the coronaviruses that people are getting. And it was very poor both in the state and at the federal level. And because there's been concerted effort to improve that, now at the federal level, they're putting into a database about 100,000 sequences a week. And Oregon is also kind of leading that effort. So we're seeing a lot of genomes come through, which should help us to identify when Omicron does show up in our state and in the country. So that's very hopeful, at least. But as the CDC says, get your booster. And the reason why I say get your booster is that it feels like a lot of people are, but apparently right now it's about 14% of people who've had their either 2 doses or their J&J who've had the booster. And apparently I know all of them in the whole United States. So get your booster, and it's really easy. Yamhill County Public Health has made it exceptionally easy to get the vaccine. They have clinics available essentially every day except for Sunday, either at the fairgrounds or at the public health building. And it's a walk-in, so you can't make an appointment, but that also means you can get there, you show up, and you get vaccinated. And it's really fun too. I should say it's not necessarily fun getting jabbed, but it's a very unique community experience.
Well, the only time you really feel it is when that little module that Bill Gates has developed actually goes into your skin. Then it hurts.
Well, for a person who has lots of hair, taking the Band-Aid off is actually the most.
Yes.
But along the lines of COVID, I will also say that we can celebrate having yet another week with declining case counts, which is just tremendous, both in Oregon and in the county itself. Hooray for that. But I do want to note, as you know, as a kind of a thing for a mayor and for Pat to think about, is that right now we would have declining hospitalizations because as people get well, they don't need to be in a hospital anymore. But apparently there's a lack of transitional facilities where people aren't ready to be back on their own. They haven't healed enough. But recovery facilities, rehab facilities don't have enough staff, or they're maxed out in beds. So people are sitting in hospitals waiting to be transferred on to a facility that's better suited to rebuilding strength and regaining lung capacity. Right? It's a weird thing. It feels similar to the challenge that we discovered when we were doing the motel sheltering program, and we were getting people moving through it, getting from the street to stability, and then moving them onto an apartment. And then we for a while just didn't have apartments that were available. Landlords just didn't have any more that were open and accessible. And it feels similar to that. We're successful, and then we're hitting that roadblock.
We're successful, but.
Yes, exactly. And that's where Turtledove Shelter for homelessness, that's what part of where Turtledove Shelter is if you can't move people through, you need to have them be safe.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, are there any other topics that you'd like to talk about? I do know that I should note the water and sewer grant applications are due for to the county by December 8th. So that looks like 8 days from now. And then we will do a quick turnover. I've asked somebody to reach out to Pat to see if he's interested in assessing them. Hopefully somebody has reached out to you.
Nope.
I will do the connections again.
All right.
The county commissioners really wanted to have folks who had a sense of how water and sewer systems fit into a bigger, city worth of people, while still not having them be, Shannon Beaucaire from Carlton, or the Mac Water and Lights general manager, somebody who could assess these projects and not have a stake in it. So I will make the connections for you again, Pat.
Good. As long as that does not result in me losing my municipal water and sewer service.
Right. Everybody does have a stake in these things. It is true. Some people have a bigger and more direct stake, however.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will make the introductions again after our meeting today.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Anything else that you would like to chat about, learn about, talk about? Mayor Watkins?
Right now, I keep forgetting to make my lists during the week as I think about things. So now I know there's a bunch of stuff, but I don't know what it is.
We will get to that next week. How about that?
That'll work. Yeah.
I do have one recent observation. For some reason, our little project has become noticed by the justice system. And we've had a couple of folks that have recently, one recently and one is coming up here next week, that when they have completed their sentencing, they're being placed out on the street with no clothes, no food, no money, and no place to live. And that strikes me as a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I know if I were hungry and had no place to live and I knew there were beds available at the jail, I don't even have to use my credit card. Somebody will come and pick me up and take me there if I do something wrong. And so we've begun to fight that battle of trying to provide these ex-prisoners with at least the basic necessities of life, such as a sleeping bag, a pillow, some food, some light, a Turtledove shelter, and all the rest of that. So I tossed that out there because I think generally we tend, as middle and upper middle class folks, not to really understand what it's like on that other side of the table. When someone has apparently paid their debt to society, but now are even further behind than they were when they went in. And, I've talked to a couple of the parole officers, and it's just the way it is. And I have trouble with that mentality, because it seems as though we're encouraging recidivism rather than really addressing it in some of these cases. And this is not a universal indictment of the system, but when those individual cases come up, I think we need to begin to think about having something better than just marching them out the door and say, best of luck.
Yeah, agreed. And I missed, because I have terrible internet right now, are you talking about coming out of state prisons or out of the jail?
Yes, both.
Well, I will say that there is a formal program that doesn't take care of everybody, called Remnant Initiatives, for folks who are coming back to Yamhill County from Department of Corrections, so both the men's and women's side. They don't have the capacity currently to take everybody on. But that's one of the things that they do is, they meet them, they build a relationship before they come out, and then they pick them up, and then they get them, their driver's license and cards, ID, bicycle, that kind of array. But again, they don't take care of everybody.
Well, one of the interesting phenomena, one of the ex-state prisoners mentioned was the state apparently has a program affectionately known as diesel therapy, where they move prisoners from prison to prison to prison so that they don't develop gang affiliations and the like. And so the system seems to be somewhat organized around a process of dislocation for the prisoners, perhaps inadvertently, perhaps by design. I'll go with inadvertent for the moment. But as I say, our experience is not universal, it's not huge, but just the few cases that we have seen make us raise our hand and say, what exactly is going on here? And that's without us even going backward into the 34 or 35 shelters we've already given out. I don't know how many of those folks fit that same category.
So basically, Patrick, what happens is that they've been moved around enough, so by the time they come out of the system, they're dumped on the street into an area where they have no infrastructure or no family or no, their community is not there. They're in a totally different community, and there's no effort being made to get them back to their original community.
Well, I think there, to parrot what Commissioner Koulis says, there are efforts being made, but there are perhaps more people coming out than that part of the system can actually handle, with the result that we're now beginning to see them. If there are no apartments for normal homeless to go into, add a 30 or 40 month jail sentence on top of that, and I doubt if the landlords are beating down the doors to address that particular problem.
And so, Mayor, one of the things that happens in Department of Corrections is that the attempt is made to move somebody close to the prison that's closest to their county of residence. Sometimes that previous residence, sometimes that's not the appropriate place for them to be. Sometimes they should be going to Clatsop County rather than going back to Yamhill County, because maybe Clatsop County is the place where they have connections. But the policy has been to return them to the place that they came from, their previous residence, so that there is no appearance that somebody is being dumped into a community that they don't have a connection to. Because that's, if you're like, oh, well, this person has had family there, or then it's you're shifting them away from what's supposed to be kind of like an equality or an equity issue for returning people to their communities. But it is very challenging, as Pat said, for people to find housing coming out of Department of Corrections. Jail is a little bit different in that the average stay in Yamhill County jails is like 17 to 30 days, is like that range. People are moving through really quickly, and they generally have connections, right? Because they're in the jail for a short period of time, but they're still living here and they're not getting moved around. And the county has really tried to make sure that they're not pre-trial detained, so they're not being held until and after a trial and a conviction. So in that way, there's a short period of time in there, but a short period of time still can be a big disconnection from your family. If you lose your job, you lose your housing, you lose, if you're on Medicaid, you lose Medicaid. So there's a restarting of so many things and rebuilding of connections that's desperately needed in order to make sure, as Pat said, that they don't just immediately go back into the system, because that's either their only what they know, or the only place that they know that they can be stable. So a lot of work. I will say that in the last with the last budget cycle from the state, they did not increase the funding for parole and probations at the level that the parole and probation actually needs, or what we call community corrections. So the funding for programs like the Remnant Initiatives, prison re-entry programs, had to cut back as well. So people are struggling to make sure that those connections are still built in the community. And from what I see, it's hundreds of hours of work of that warm handoff, getting people, everything that they need in order to be a functioning member of the community. But we are blessed in Yamhill County to have businesses that regularly hire people who are immediately out of corrections. So that is a real bonus in Yamhill County. It's just that if we don't have housing for them, it's really challenging to keep those jobs. And Pat, thank you for bringing it up. And I'll be sure, now I have 2 jobs: to connect you with the county for water and sewer, and to connect you with Jody at Remnant Initiatives.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, because
okay.
We could probably work hand in glove there.
For sure, for sure. All right, is there anything else? I've learned that this is what journalists say when they're doing interviews. Is there anything you wanted to say that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, but
all right.
There's just my wish to all of us that we have a much better year this year, and let's keep our fingers crossed. And thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah,
thank you for your work, Mayor, and thank you for your work, Pat.
Thank you.
And we will see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.